we're now approaching Rumeli Hisari Fort. Now, just to give a brief overview what Rumeli Hisari Fort is and what it was used for. Now, Rumeli Hisari Fort was obviously a fort. Now, this fort stood on the Bosphorus Strait. Well, it stands on the Bosphorus Strait. It's still there. Okay, so yeah, this fort was created by Sultan Mehmed II, or famously known as Sultan Fatih. Sultan Fatih made this fort, and as you can see today, the three forts are still there today, as you can see. And now each fort is named after three of his most loyal followers.
Benteng Rumeli Hisari, sebuah benteng yang berdiri di Selat Bosphorus. Benteng ini didirikan oleh Sultan Mehmed II atau Sultan Fatih. Benteng ini berdiri dengan 3 menara utama yang masing-masing dinamakan sesuai dengan 3 orang pengikut setia Sultan Mehmed II.
The large tower near the gate was built by Chandali Halil Pasha. The southern tower was built by Zaganos Pasha, and the northern tower was built by Sarika Pasha. This fort has 14 watchtowers, with towers ranging from 22 to 28 meters high, with a wall thickness of between 5 to 7 meters. The Sultan ordered the building of the fort to be formed in Muhammad's alphabet in Arabic script.
Menara besar yang berada dekat gerbang dibangun oleh Kandarli Halil Pasha. Menara bagian selatan dibangun oleh Zagonos Pasha. Menara bagian utara dibangun oleh Saruka Pasha. Benteng ini mempunyai 14 menara pengawas dengan ketinggian menara berkisar antara 22 sampai 28 meter dengan ketebalan dinding antara 5-7 meter. Sultan memerintahkan bangunan benteng ini dibentuk dalam abjad Muhammad dalam aksara Arab.
Rumeli Hisari was founded on a hill on the edge of the Bosphorus Strait, built with the aim of controlling traffic services for the Bosphorus Strait. Also, to cut off the line of resistance for Byzantine troops moving from the direction of the Dead Sea, such as from the Amorous region, Qatar, or Sinai.
Rumeli Hisari didirikan di atas bukit yang berada di pinggiran Selat Bosphorus. Dibangun dengan tujuan untuk mengontrol lalu lintas pelayanan Selat Bosphorus. Juga memutuskan jalur bantuan bagi pasukan Bizantin yang bergerak dari arah Laut Mati seperti dari kawasan Asmara, Kata atau Sinop.
Rumeli Hisari Fortress was worked on for 4 months. Gosh, that's a long time. There are 6 large cannons that can fire up to 300 kilos of bullets. These were called the Basilica Cannon.
Benteng Rumeli Hisari ini dikerjakan hanya 4 bulan. Ada 6 meriam besar yang dapat menembakkan peluru seberat 300 kg yang disebut dengan Basilica Cannon.
a cannon maker by the name of Orban from the city of Constantinople offered his expertise in making cannons for Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, who previously worked for Constantinople. So Orban was a cannon maker from Constantinople. However, because the Constantinople government did not pay the wages promised to him, he finally defected and offered his services to Sultan al-Fatih to build cannons. 3 months later, this cannon maker successfully completed the work of numerous amounts of cannons to strengthen the Sultan's troops. Among them was a giant cannon that had never been made or created before on this earth. It weighed about 700 tons. The cannon bullets also were a very gargantuan size. It takes 100 buffalo plus 100 strong men to pull or move this cannon from one place to another. This cannon was eventually named Midfa Sultani, or the Sultan's Cannon.
Seorang ahli pembuat meriam dari kota Konstantinopel bernama Orban dari Hungaria menawarkan jasa keahliannya membuat meriam kepada Sultan Muhammad al-Fatih, yang mana sebelumnya lelaki ini bekerja untuk Konstantinopel. Namun karena pemerintah Konstantinopel tidak membayar upah yang dijanjikan kepadanya, ia akhirnya membelot dan menawarkan jasanya kepada Sultan al-Fatih untuk membina meriam. Selang 3 bulan, ahli pembuat meriam ini berjaya menyelesaikan penggarapan sejumlah meriam untuk memperkuat pasukan Sultan al-Fatih, yang diantaranya terdapat sebuah meriam raksasa yang belum pernah dibuat di muka bumi ini. Beratnya sekitar 700 ton dan pelurunya, meriam ini juga memiliki ukuran yang sangat besar. Diperlukan 100 ekor kerbau dan ditambah 100 orang laki-laki yang kuat untuk menari dan memindahkan meriam ini dari satu tempat ke tempat lain. Meriam ini akhirnya dinamakan Midfa Sultani atau meriam sang sultan.
Now we're gonna enter this tunnel-like area. So this was originally a cistern during the Byzantine period time, and when the Ottomans came and conquered Constantinople, this area, as you can see, was turned into a jami. A jami is a Turkish name for a masjid, a mosque. And also, as you can see, the brick and mortar was of the Khorasan. It's an area in the Iran region, Khorasan structure, as you can see. And it was also used to house water. So it had a water facility, water storage unit, as well as a masjid, a jami, a mosque. Okay guys, this is the part where we're going to talk a little bit about the history and about the origins of the fortress of Rumeli Hisari. Might be a tad tedious and a bit boring, but I'll make it as interesting as it can be. Fortress of Rumeli Hisari. So it's located on the European shore of the Bosphorus and in the northernmost district of modern-day Istanbul. Of course, it's a striking monument. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors to this great city follow the long-established tradition of taking a Bosphorus cruise and see the impressive castle from afar. So from the Bosphorus, they would look at the impressive sites of Rumeli Hisari. Now, a few of them realized that the building played an existential role in the siege and fall of Constantinople in 1453, and that its very shape and details exemplify the historical developments that led to this world-changing event, the end of the Byzantine Empire after over 1,000 years, over millennia, can you imagine, and the establishment of the new Ottoman Empire as a major player for 5 centuries. Distinguished by its historical significance, its highly scenic setting overlooking the Fatih Sultan Bridge that links Europe and Asia, and its sheer monumentality. The site includes remains of the fortification walls with towers and gates, as well as cisterns, fountains, and a mosque. It currently functions as a cultural center with an open-air theater and a museum set within the lower part of the recently built Bosphorus University campus. In a city where there is so much to visit and discover: Byzantine churches, Ottoman mosques, walls and cisterns, Ottoman palaces, bazaars, food and spices, and a place where East meets West. It's a bit of a tongue twister, if I may say so myself. Rumeli Hisari Fortress is an off-the-beaten-track site, rarely listed amongst the top 10 or even the top 30 things to do and see. Notwithstanding the lack of fame, it is a highlight on an Istanbul tour, should you wish to use one. The name Rumeli Hisari means the fortress in the land of the Romans, i.e., in simple terms, on the European side or the Byzantine side of the Bosphorus. Initially, it was called Bogaskesen Castle. I don't know if I said it right. I'm sorry, Turkish people. Whoever's watching this, correct me if I'm wrong. Literally means the throat cutter, as its purpose was to cut the straits, or the throat that is the Bosphorus, strategically placed. Yes. It was built in 1452 by the order of the current Sultan Mehmed, famous as Mehmed the Conqueror, or simply Mehmed II, by the narrowest point of the Bosphorus channel, just opposite Anadolu Hisari, another Ottoman fortress located on the Anatolian side, the Asian side, and constructed about 60 years earlier as an observation post and save point for a small number of Ottoman troops. Despite damages, repairs, modifications throughout the centuries, Rumeli Hisari still breathes history. Its great significance lies in some specific and well-defined elements closely related with the general circumstances, and innovations that shaped the history of the late Middle Ages and the pivotal events it was involved in. I know some of you viewers are tired by now, but bear with me. At the outset, however, 2 general points about castles and fortifications should be noted. First, it is important to keep in mind that talking about castles always means engaging with the topic of warfare and of the foreign and defense policies of states, blah blah blah. Secondly, the development of medieval castles followed by the military developments and standards of their periods. All very boring stuff. The 15th century was that crucial time when the introduction of new materials, i.e. gunpowder, and new fighting techniques, firearms, and complex siege machinery, a bit of a tongue twister there as well, led to dramatic changes affecting the conduct of warfare as well as the design of new fortresses. Hence, Rumeli Hisari's significance is due to some new features of military architecture, underlining the development of warfare technology at this fleeting but pivotal point in time, together with its contribution to the evolution of the developing Ottoman military. A further factor of significance is certainly the fortress's key strategic location and its function during the Ottoman conquest, the final fall of Constantinople, and the entire 11th century-old Byzantine Empire. So, okay. Numbers, new forms, and new powerful technologies. So, Rumeli Hisari, roughly 30,000 square meters, really big, to be honest, and it's like a small town. Should you wish to go there, I highly recommend it. Now, the 3 huge towers, a major and typical element of Ottoman fortifications, in conjunction with the innovative replacements for defensive cannons. Now, what distinguishes this fortress is that it is more advanced than the more old-fashioned Ottoman fortifications in the Balkan Peninsula, in Albania, Aden, and in Thrace. Now, we'll talk more about the introduction of gunpowder and how it affected this fortress. The introduction of gunpowder and the spread of artillery in the second half of the 15th century created a revolution in all aspects of defensive and offensive warfare, affecting both weapons and fortifications. Clearly, the Republic of Venice and its expert architects and engineers played a leading role in the evolution of military defense architectures, especially in the Aegean. They introduced several innovations by adding new defensive structures to existing forts, widening the moats, increasing the thickness of the walls and of the wall walks for the placement and movement of cannons. Thus, during the 16th century, the Venetians completely changed the preceding medieval castles by introducing strong, squat, and angular bastions with several projections and sloping walls based on the system of side fire, aiming to leave attackers exposed and unprotected. All this was to combat the new form of warfare, which was gunpowder, which could penetrate any wall that wouldn't be thick enough and would leave lots of nations defenseless. So the Ottomans, they were never as advanced as the Venetians or the other Europeans in regards to defensive structures. So what they did was they suffered several defeats by these Venetians and the Knights of Rhodes until they finally came to besiege their fortified cities. However, the situation at Constantinople in 1453 was different. Here, the Ottoman had upper hand in terms of both attack and defense. Their dominance in both regards was beyond question, and moreover, the recovery of the Byzantine Empire was beyond the achievable or imaginable by this time. Yes. Understand and truly appreciate the extent of the Ottomans' handiwork at this time. So anyway, we move on to the final stage of this video. So by the time of Mehmed II, Constantinople was surrounded on all sides by Ottoman territories. So at that time, Constantinople was fully surrounded. Its empire was on its last legs, to be honest. So the new Sultan with his reformed army made his military preparation in his European capital, Edirne in eastern Thrace. In 1452, he ordered the casting of a new massive bronze cannon by Urban, as we have mentioned earlier, the same master craftsman and engineer who earlier had unsuccessfully approached the Byzantine emperor in order to promote and sell his new superguns. Bronze cannons were, however, extremely expensive and thus unobtainable for the Byzantine state. All things considered, they were on their last legs, like I said before. Whereas for Mehmed II, they were the most ordinarily well-suited weapons to destroy his enemy. The biggest of Urban's monster guns, famed as the Royal Cannon, was made of solid bronze. You don't want to go into the details. 8.2 meters long with a diameter of 76 centimeters. It was at that very time Mehmed II decided to construct Rumeli Hisari on the European shore in order for it and its older counterpart on the Asian side to block all sea traffic to and from the Black Sea. So like an economic embargo. So Constantinople will be faced with an embargo that will eventually force them to surrender. So he built Rumeli Hisari, and Rumeli Hisari first saw action in November of 1452 when its guns opened fire on a pair of Venetian ships attempting to escape the scene. Ironically, the monster cannon of Sultan Fatih turned out to be of limited use in destroying the city's walls. Eventually, its immobility and slow rate rendered it ineffective. The final resolution came after several weeks of stalling by the sea and through assaults by smaller but still massive cannons. The Bosphorus was very well protected by Rumeli Hisari and the smaller sea fortresses, and thus blocked that sea route for the Byzantines and any external forces, so like an economic embargo. So nothing could come in, nothing could come out, and the Byzantines would eventually starve to death in terms of weaponry and in terms of foods and supplies. The Ottoman vessels, under the protection of the new cannon artillery, forced the Byzantine fleet to find refuge away from the sea walls, while at the same time the Ottoman army devised a brilliant trick to penetrate into the heart of the city. An intriguing anecdote from the 1453 siege. This was a siege where they literally built a ramp from one side of the Bosphorus to the other side to combat the blockade the Byzantines put up. And they literally dragged the ships from one side of the Bosphorus to the other. Technologically speaking, it was a masterpiece, to be honest. From that time onwards, the Ottomans bombarded the city walls continuously and from all sides. The local population was exhausted, the numerous cracks in the walls could not be restored any longer, and Constantinople fell after a bloody and dramatic siege on the 29th of May 1453. In conclusion, Rumeli Hisari is indeed a place of great significance, a key structure standing in between the two worlds during 1453, involved in inaugurating a new historical era and new international geopolitical balances that turned Constantinople for the second time in its long history into the capital of a newly risen, powerful empire that was to be a major power, a major player for many centuries. It is a perfect sight to imagine the sounds, the smells, and the images of battle, and to discover the Ottoman history and archaeology of Istanbul, alongside various gems from the Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, and Ottoman worlds. Hammams, bazaars, and aromas of a city that has always straddled the edge of two continents and two worlds.